how did you handle town hall meetings when Tea Partiers interrupted the town hall meetings? With the same level of dismissiveness? Or did you handle it with the sense that, what's going on here, these angry people? Who are these angry people?
Well, my coverage of that was about it being organized.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, that is, your coverage of it was to delegitimize it. That it was actually not real. It was AstroTurf.
No, actually no. It was, I think my approach to that was to say this is being used as a widespread political tactic by people with a lot of money and a lot of stake in the policy issues. And they're sort of deploying direct action activists in a way that we haven't seen before.
Would you say that the general spirit of the block of coverage on MSNBC was as dismissive of the woman who stands up and says Bush is a war criminal? Do you think MSNBC has changed over the last 5 years? You know, there is a genetic linkage between Keith. Keith was the first, and it was a voice like in the wilderness. People were like, what?
Yeah. Oh
my God, you can say that, you know. And then you came on and Ed, and again, now I'm talking about climate as opposed to weather. But it does create a linkage that I think it would be hard for you to say, like, geez, I don't know if we're really doing.
Last time, we shared a video of Jon Stewart eviscerating Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace, and Joe Scarborough for their Trump derangement syndrome, only to watch them double down instead of learning their lesson, and who swooped in from the wings to deliver yet another classic takedown. Jon Stewart, of course. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive right in.
We've all bought into that the conflict in this country is left and right. Liberal, conservative, red, blue. And all the news networks have bought into that. CNN sort of started it. They had this idea that, you know, the fight in Washington is Republicans and Democrats. So why don't we isolate that, and we'll stand back here, and that's, you know, Democrats and Republicans will go at it. Red and blue staters will go at it. And what it does is it amplifies a division that I actually don't think is the right fight. But if what you're asking me is, do I believe that? What he's saying, that's what I believe? No.
Now, this is an older clip, and it might surprise some of you. Back in the day, Jon Stewart was a vocal and unapologetic liberal, a champion of progressive causes. But even he could see the writing on the wall. He recognized the dangerous direction networks like MSNBC and CNN, under Rachel Maddow, were steering the country toward. Instead of serving as a glue that could help bridge America's growing ideological divide, these outlets were doubling down on tribalism, feeding their audiences a steady diet of outrage and confirmation bias. The media, which once held the potential to unite, or at least foster civil discourse, became another weapon in the partisan arsenal. And now just look around. We become a nation split into political tribes, where debate is dead and distrust is a default. What was once a warning has now become our reality.
What I do believe is both sides have their way of shutting down debate. And the news networks have allowed these two sides to become the fight in the country. And I think the fight in the country is corruption versus not corruption. Extremists versus regular. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but what's the lefty way of shutting down? Well, I mean,
okay, you've said Bush is a war criminal. Now, that may be technically true. In my world, war criminal is Pol Pot or the Nuremberg trials.
Or Harry
It's not
Truman,
saying
but then you took that back.
Yeah. And I did for good reason, because I don't think he was. And I think that, you know, again, we have to define our terms. But I think that's such an incendiary charge that when you put it into conversation as, well, technically he is, that may be right, but it feels like a conversation stopper, not a conversation.
I completely share Jon Stewart's sentiment here. Far too often, Democrats shut down meaningful conversations and legitimate debate by resorting to name-calling and public shaming. It's a tactic that's become all too common, especially when the topic is uncomfortable or challenges their narrative. The moment someone raises concerns about America's involvement in the Middle East, instead of engaging in a thoughtful discussion, they respond with personal attacks and moral superiority. The same thing happens with Donald Trump. Bring up any of his policies, whether it's on immigration, the economy, or foreign affairs, and suddenly you're met with labels like racist Hitler or narcissist. There's no room for nuance, no space for disagreement. Just a knee-jerk reaction designed to silence and discredit. It's not only intellectually dishonest, it's toxic to a functioning democracy.
I follow your logic and I believe what you're saying up until a point. And the
I'm glad somebody's following.
No,
it.
I do follow your logic. But it's,
right.
I mean, the people interrupting meetings and interrupting rallies are direct action activists who are doing stuff to be purposely disruptive and a pain in order to sort of throw a wrench in the works.
Right.
And then on the other side,
so you're saying that it's really nothing.
Well, it's not that it's nothing. It's just not being done with the same level of authority as it is on the right.
You see just how sneaky Rachel Maddow can be. One moment she's defending the so-called woke warriors who disrupt public meetings and harass everyday people just trying to live their lives, all in the name of sending some grand political message. But the moment Jon Stewart challenges her and asks whether that kind of behavior is actually productive or even acceptable, she pivots. Suddenly, it's not a left-wing issue at all. Nope. She claims it happens more on the right. Classic deflection. The hypocrisy is staggering. Instead of taking accountability or acknowledging the extremism brewing on her own side, she shifts blame to preserve her narrative. It's a calculated move, one that reeks of partisanship and intellectual dishonesty. And sadly, it's exactly the kind of evasive rhetoric that keeps fueling division rather than solving anything. Y'all remember when Scarborough did the same thing with Bill Maher?
You're saying it's both sides, isn't it?
Well,
there is no doubt.
There's no misinformation.
There's some disinformation from the left, but comparing it to what Donald Trump spews out every day, every week, comparing it to what Elon Musk is spewing out, unfortunately, on X, there's no...
You were like, Bill, how can you, Mr. False Equivalency? It's like, no, Joe, come on. I thought you were Joe Scarborough. There's crazy on both sides.
At this point, it's hard not to wonder if MSNBC hands out a playbook to its on-air personalities. Both Rachel Maddow and Joe Scarborough seem to follow the exact same script. Deny, deflect, and downplay anything that reflects poorly on the left, while magnifying and obsessing over everything from the right. It's almost formulaic. If there's disinformation, extremism, or hypocrisy on the left, the strategy is to either ignore it entirely or brush it off as a minor blip. But if it originates from the right, suddenly it's front-page news, treated like a national crisis. Every detail is scrutinized, every narrative pushed to the extreme. There's no balance, no honest comparison, just a relentless effort to protect their ideological allies and vilify their opponents. It's not journalism. It's propaganda with a polished smile. So Jon Stewart had called him out.
How did you handle town hall meetings when Tea Partiers interrupted the town hall meetings? With the same level of dismissiveness? Or did you handle it with the sense that, what's going on here, these angry people? Who are these angry people?
Well, my coverage of that was about it being organized.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, that is, your coverage of it was to delegitimize it. That it was actually not real. It was AstroTurf.
No, actually no. It was, I think my approach to that was to say this is being used as a widespread political tactic by people with a lot of money and a lot of stake in the policy issues. And they're sort of deploying direct action activists in a way that we haven't seen before.
Would you say that the general spirit of the block of coverage on MSNBC was as dismissive of the woman who stands up and says Bush is a war criminal, or the people at the town hall? Do you think that they were viewed through the same prism?
I think that they were viewed through an appropriately proportional prism, because I think Code Pink is like 12 ladies, and I think that literally half of Indiana says they identify with the Tea Party. And so,
but again, they say they identify with the Tea Party. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Identify how? Identify with the idea that they like smaller government, or identify with yelling in a town hall?
I really appreciate how Jon Stewart is pressing Rachel Maddow in this moment. You can actually see the smile fade from Maddow's face as she begins to squirm under the weight of Stewart's pointed questions. It's subtle but telling. Now, if you're a bit lost on what's happening here, let me break it down. Stewart is asking Maddow a very direct question. Why did MSNBC give so much coverage to a woman who interrupted former President George W. Bush's speech by calling him a war criminal, yet didn't offer the same kind of attention when Tea Partiers disrupted Democratic events using similar tactics? Stewart isn't just nitpicking coverage. He's making a larger, crucial point. He's highlighting the clear partisan slant in mainstream media and how that selective outrage contributes to the growing political divide in this country. When networks amplify dissent on one side but ignore or demonize on the other, they don't just support the news, they shape public perception. And Stewart, to his credit, is calling that out in real time, showing that the media doesn't just reflect a vision, it often fuels it. Let's keep the clip rolling.
If the argument is, you do exactly what Fox do and you're as bad as Fox, anybody who has watched our show in any measure would understand the special place in our hearts for Fox.
Yeah.
So again, it feels to me like false equivalence sounds like something that you're doing as well. We have a tendency to grant amnesty to people that we agree with and to overly demonize people.
And that's exactly right, because MSNBC consistently aligns itself with the political left. It tends to echo and defend most progressive positions while reflexively demonizing anything that originates from the right. The double standard is blatant. Time and time again, we've seen Republicans propose ideas that mirror those of the Democrats, only to be harshly criticized, mocked, or dismissed by left-leaning media. Take criminal justice reform. For instance, when President Trump signed the First Step Act, a bipartisan bill aimed at reducing recidivism and reforming sentencing laws, it was met with lukewarm acknowledgement at best, despite being a progressive cause for years. Meanwhile, similar reforms under Obama were widely celebrated. Or consider border security. Democrats like Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and even Joe Biden once supported physical barriers and tougher border policies. But when Trump echoed those same sentiments, he was branded a xenophobe and a racist. Even on infrastructure spending, Trump proposed multi-trillion-dollar packages similar to Democratic plans, yet media outlets framed his approach as reckless or unserious. The point is clear. It's not always about the policy. It's about who's proposing it. If it comes from the left, it's visionary. If it comes from the right, it's dangerous. This kind of selective framing fuels tribalism, discourages honest debate, and reinforces the very division that media figures claim to lament. But what happens when Maddow tries to flip the script? Let's check it out.
A lot of people on the right who have made this decision that they'll only talk to media who agrees with them.
That's their greatest triumph.
Yeah. And that's new. I think they're only able to do that now because the conservative media is big enough that they can still use it to get their voice out.
You know, I don't think that's a new concept. I don't think that's a Republican or right-wing concept. I think they've executed it pretty well. I'd say Bill Clinton was pretty good at delegitimizing. The great thing that they've done, I think the brilliance of Fox is they've delegitimized the idea of editorial authority while exercising incredible editorial authority.
Right.
Which is, it's amazing. And they also have the game that they're all out to get us. So any criticism of them can be filtered through the idea that it's persecution. It's not, this isn't criticism, it's persecution.
You could tell Maddow was eagerly waiting for Jon Stewart to launch into a classic takedown of the right, especially Fox News. That's what she expected, maybe even what she counted on. But Stewart wasn't playing along. He wasn't in the mood for partisan potshots or easy applause lines. Instead, he did something unexpected. He gave credit where it was due. He recognized the strategic brilliance of what the Republicans had done. While the left dominated the mainstream airwaves and built echo chambers of affirmation, the right found its voice through alternative platforms, grassroots movements, and direct messaging. Stewart saw that as a political masterstroke, not something to mock, but something to learn from, rather than ridicule. He actually praised Republicans for refusing to stay silent, for pushing back even when the media landscape seemed stacked against them. It was a moment of brutal honesty, and one that clearly caught Maddow off guard. Stewart then finished Maddow off with his brutal takedown.
Do you think MSNBC has changed over the last 5 years? You know, there is a genetic linkage between Keith. Keith was the first, and it was a voice like in the wilderness. People were like, what?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you can say that, you know. And then you came on and Ed, and again, now I'm talking about climate as opposed to weather. But
yeah,
it does create a linkage that I think it would be hard for you to say, like, geez, I don't know if we're really doing that.
Well,
then
no,
what are you doing?
I think what happens is that I think the media, having been derided for so long as being liberal and biased and being very afraid of that charge,
right.
When Keith spoke out the way he did, he essentially came out of the closet as a liberal, and it nothing bad happened. It was okay. He grew his audience, if anything. And so I think it gave network executives some courage to say, okay, people who are liberals can be on TV as long as they call themselves liberals.
See, I think that
and then they hire the rest of us.
Network executives work on courage is, I think what they did is they went, why is Fox News kicking our asses? We need to fight this with a similar or...
Jon Stewart delivered the final nail in the coffin, and it was as sharp as it was revealing. Maddow had claimed, somewhat proudly, that network executives at MSNBC had empowered their journalists and hosts to express their political and ideological stances freely. It sounded noble on the surface, like a celebration of authenticity and intellectual independence. But Stewart wasn't buying it. With surgical precision, he dismantled that narrative. He pointed out what was really going on. MSNBC didn't encourage ideological expression out of some high-minded devotion to free speech. They wanted a weapon, an aggressive counterforce to Fox News. Stewart exposed a core truth Maddow was glossing over. The network wasn't fostering open discourse. It was building a partisan machine. His calm, matter-of-fact delivery made the moment even more powerful. Maddow tried to spin it as journalistic freedom, but Stewart peeled back the curtain and showed it for what it truly was: corporate strategy disguised as ideological empowerment. In the end, Jon Stewart didn't just challenge Rachel Maddow. He exposed the media's role in deepening America's political divide. While MSNBC claims to champion free expression, Stewart revealed it as a calculated effort to rival Fox News. His takedown was a rare moment of honesty in a landscape dominated by spin, and it reminded us that media bias isn't just about what's said, but why, how, and who's benefiting from it. And with that, we draw the curtains on today's video. If you enjoyed our commentary, then hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.